TelePacific Wireless Antennas.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tonight we'll be looking at major design review to legalize existing rooftop antennas and wireless equipment at 1603 Powell Street. Oops. My apologies. There we go. So the site location is just south of Powell Street there, and it has Shell Mound to the east, and Christie wraps around the west and south side of the site. The wireless equipment is on the rooftop, slightly off-center towards the east, located around a penthouse structure, and it's either directly attached to it or directly adjacent to that penthouse. And here's a rooftop plan showing that. The north elevation, you can see there that's visible a little bit, and the existing is painted white, and the proposal is to paint it to match the rest of the building. The west elevation, you can't actually see it from the street. This is on Christie, closer to Powell Street Plaza. From the south, you can barely see the antennas on Christie, also by Powell Street Plaza towards the south there. And from the east, there's no rooftop pointy design. So there you can more clearly see the penthouse from this angle. And the existing one on the left side of your screen there, you can see it's white, and the proposal is to paint it, both the equipment and the penthouse, to match the rest of the building. So for major design review, this needs to be consistent with the general plan, the design guidelines, and also be compatible with the surrounding area. With the design, with the general plan, it's consistent with the policies and goals aimed at preventing building bulk and promoting light-colored finishes on buildings. For the design guidelines, it's consistent with maintaining the neighborhood character, and it prevents adding building bulk, and the painting will improve the architectural integration. And it's also compatible with the surrounding area and does not adversely impact the surrounding area. For the environmental status, it's exempt through CEQA. And staff recommends approval of this project. So if you have any questions, I can ask you. You can ask both myself and Scott Sutherland, who's here to answer your questions.
You want to mention the new CEQA exemption?
I'm sorry?
The CEQA exemption.
Yeah, so that we decided to do, in the staff report, it mentions just 15311, and we added 15303 as well.
Right, that's not in your resolution, so we'd recommend that you, if you choose to approve this, that you include that CEQA exemption also.
Thank you, Charlie.
And this item just got overlooked when it was built originally?
That's my understanding. Scott, did you want to speak to the original, what happened originally with this project?
To the best of my knowledge,
Yeah.
I can, which isn't going to be a whole lot. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Scott Sutherland. I represent TelePacific Communications in this matter. Telecommunications acquired a company called NextWeb, and NextWeb built this facility, I think, in 2002. And we don't know, we don't have any records, didn't receive any records of at that time, and as to why they chose not to, or even looked at CEQA compliance. That we didn't see any records of any attempt to get any kind of local permits or approvals.
How did you identify at this time that it was something that needed to be legalized?
An audit of the files after acquiring NextWeb, just going through the files. Representation was made that we had all the approvals, and took that at face value, but dug in, did the research, and found that from inquiring here at the city that we couldn't find any evidence that permits were ever obtained.
Is the penthouse part of this application as well, or is that part of the?
No, that's a mechanical penthouse for the hotel building. To the extent we're painting it to match the rest of the building, that's it.
So could you describe what kind of screenage could exist around these?
Yes, it would not be screening around the antennas per se. The antenna themselves can't have any material in front of them. It'll attenuate the transmission to the point where they won't work. However, we could there could be a structure built that we could affix the antennas to and mount those to the exterior of a structure. So there could be, a box built up on top of the roof, and then the antennas attached to it.
So they're directional?
Yes.
Antennas? And so what's to prevent you from attaching them to the structure but a little bit lower?
Line of sight. The difference between, this is not cellular equipment where you have signal that travels out, essentially is line of sight, but it can bounce around. It's meant for our mobile use. This is fixed wireless. It's a different frequency. It's WiMAX frequency. It's worldwide operability of microwave access. So it's actually a global standard that uses fixed wireless. So the antennas have to be aligned with direct line of sight, clear line of sight to the opposite antenna, the other direction.
We're looking at 4 feet here, so I'm sure you can lower it just a little bit.
And then there's separation required for the antennas as well. So we have it designed. It's fixed about as low as we can put them up there, the way they're designed, and still make the clearance to the direction out that they're shooting to.
WiMAX antennas won't transmit through fiberglass like LTE antennas do?
No, different frequency, higher spectrum. It's in the 3 gigahertz to 60 gigahertz spectrum, various spectrum in there, where cellular is 700 to 2500 megahertz. It's just different propagation and different technology scheme as well.
So are they aiming at what receptors are they aiming at? What line of sight needs to be clear?
It's fixed to other locations where the customers are using that spectrum, and the WiMAX it competes with the local phone companies and cable companies to provide broadband services, essentially last mile broadband services for companies.
So just so that I understand how these work. So when I first looked at them, I thought that because they are microwave antennas, yeah?
Correct.
So what I was envisioning was that the signal was being beamed to these microwave antennas to provide wired service or whatever through the hotel. Is that not?
That is
they're actually
true.
up. Okay.
They are the hotel, and that's not always the case, but in this case, the hotel does use the TelePacific service in lieu of AT&T. I think AT&T be the local carrier here, or a cable company. So they don't use that. It's a discounted service. It's quite a savings for businesses to use TelePacific versus the bigger companies that use all the old public telephone infrastructure that's out there. So that's not always the case that a building owner or other tenant, as a case of Sheraton, would use this service, but in this case it is.
Oh, but so also in addition, these antennas are beaming a signal to other wireless users in the vicinity?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if we built a structure that was 4 feet taller, basically, which is the height of the highest dish, is that correct?
The highest dish above the roof of the penthouse?
Yep.
Yes.
Then you could attach it to that.
Yes.
Is that something you're willing to do?
Sure. I mean, that's what we need to do to satisfy the conditions.
But Vanessa, I don't understand what that's going to do because it can't block the antenna because the antenna would then lose reception. So by doing that, what are we
It's
achieving?
directional.
Just that it's
So it
not
would just be
freestanding,
attached
I
to the outside of the building. So it's attached, it could be moved to the outside,
Would we
whatever.
still see it as we do now?
We'd have to make the building taller.
It
It would be
It
taller
would be taller, yeah.
and bulkier, yeah.
I guess I have a hard time believing that can't lower them a little bit and recalibrate them. That seems confusing to me. I just don't, I guess I don't understand that.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not an engineer, so if you're an engineer and looking for that kind of answer, I can't tell you as precisely as maybe you're looking for, but I could tell you that it is line of sight, and that I would say it this way, they wouldn't necessarily build it up where they do just to do it, because it just is, it's more effort to do it initially, and it is really what happens when they do align these. They have technicians at both ends, and they're actually measuring the amount of power being received at each end, so they keep kind of playing with it until it lines up. So that's how they get to these different elevations. And then after that, the consideration is what separation do I need because of the spectrum being used to make sure that the antennas don't interfere with each other. Those are the two big considerations that go in when they lay these out.
Chair Cardoza? Over here. I would just ask for some clarification from Commissioner Coomerly. I'm not sure what the 4 feet is you're referring to. The drawing I'm looking at on page A4, the penthouse, top of the penthouse is 80 feet, and the top of the tallest antenna is 91 feet, so that's like 11 feet.
Oh. You're so right.
Oh, yeah, you are.
I was looking at 4-foot microwave dish, which is on top of the pole.
Oh, I see.
That's the diameter of the dish.
Yeah, okay.
So, and the existing penthouse is 11 feet, so basically you'd be doubling the height of the penthouse.
Right. Okay.
Do you have any other questions of the applicant?
Okay, thank you.
We'll open the meeting to the public. Does anybody from the public wish to speak on this item? Close the meeting to the public. You want to start?
I really don't have anything to say other than I've never noticed these until this came up. And then as I looked out my window, which I'm 30 floors above the ground, it was like, holy cow, look at those things. And then as I looked out the window on top of my own elevated penthouse, there's another one. And I even had to ask John, have you ever seen that before? So I think that basically in our modern society, these are things that we just have gotten used to. They're there. And pretty much we all complain about dropped cell phone calls and not internet access. We're pretty much addicted to these things or attached. So as unattractive as they are, I mean, they've been there for 10 years. I think this company is trying to do the right thing by coming back to us and getting this done properly, and they're trying to make an effort to clean them up, make them a little less obvious. So I think we need to give them some kudos for that. So I'm fine with it as it's proposed.
I have a question. So in the resolution, it says that, okay, this is for an application for major design review to legalize existing antennas and rooftop equipment. Are we just talking about antennas? Are there other rooftop equipment
Yeah,
that's part of this application?
yes, let me take you to the rooftop.
I just saw it here.
So right here, you'll see there's a little box directly adjacent to
The equipment cabinet?
Yes, exactly. So it's not just antennas, there's also a wall-mounted equipment cabinet there. So that was just including that, for clarification, yeah.
And how tall is that?
That's shorter than the penthouse itself.
Okay.
So if we go to, let's see.
And that's just because the equipment cabinet did not have a permit to begin with?
The entire setup, the antennas and the equipment cabinet, the whole system did not.
Okay.
If you look at the east elevation where it would be clearest to see the equipment cabinet, it is very difficult to see. So it's not a very large piece of equipment.
So I'm wondering if it's, so this is for the existing equipment that but any future equipment would need to be enclosed, is that correct?
Any future changes to it would need to be enclosed?
Additions?
Not necessarily.
Right.
I mean, any future changes would require the same kind of approval as this, major design review. The guidelines say to enclose it if feasible. And I mean, the findings that we've presented to you tonight indicate why it's not feasible in this case because of the kinds of antennas that these are. So there's not an absolute requirement for screening. It's if feasible. For this type of antenna, that apparently is not feasible.
Well, then I'm just sort of trying to figure out how to mitigate what's already pretty ugly from the east view, and I've always actually thought that. I've always noticed that. And I always wonder why it was painted white. But so that's kind of exciting that it'll be painted the color of the building. I think that's good. But what I'm trying to, if feasible means, well, now we actually need to go up 15, 20, 30, you know, where's this feasibility end? And can we put a cap on it right now while we're making this resolution?
Well, for these particular antennas, if you're saying go up 15, 20 feet, I assume you're referring to the structure that these would be attached to the outside of.
Future antennas, because there will probably be more, I'm guessing. There's some now. And there will be upgrades, updates. You know, that's the way it goes. So I'm just trying to stop while we're as far as we've got without having it be worse.
Well, that wouldn't actually be screening, though. I mean, it might make them a little less obvious if they were attached to something that, you know, solid wall behind them, but they'd still be visible.
But you know what I'm saying? So more. What if
Yeah.
we have even more of them? It just gets worse and worse.
I would suggest you deal with that when it comes before you. That's not really part of this application. I don't know, we might ask the applicant if they have any plans for future expansion.
Technology moves on. We have to.
Well, then they'd have to come back to us and ask for permission.
You need to come to the microphones, please.
To my knowledge, there's nothing foreseeable now that's planned, but to your point, yeah, I hope that the company does need to come back to see you again, and that we need to add some more antennas. Now we're established, and then we'd bring you what we've got. I hear the concern, and we just, you know, propose something. It just depends on where the customer is and how we need to address that customer. So I'll be sure that our engineers know, let's see if we can do something different with these in this, or look at maybe even another building if we have to.
I feel like since this needs to be kind of grandfathered in for some whatever reason, possibly, and at the same time, future, that's not going to fly to have more of these sticking up in the future. So,
yeah, I agree with what Commissioner Kummerly is saying. They're pretty ugly up there, and the view that you see them the most prominently from is Powell Street, where there's thousands of cars coming over every day, and you're right up next to them. But on the other hand, I do recognize that they've been there for 12 years, that you're trying to do the right thing by coming in and making them look a little bit better. And I would say that if there is any future additions to this, as there was to the water tower antennas, that there would need to be some kind of more organized structure to make them look a little better. I mean, even if you could do that now, you know, I think about the antenna towers that are down by the railroad tracks. They're pretty darn ugly too. So it doesn't seem like, you know, they're not. I don't like the fake palm trees and redwood trees that hide them either. So it's kind of it seems like it's a necessary evil. But if there are future additions to this, I would definitely like to see them organized in a more aesthetically pleasing way. But for this one, I think at least painting them is going to be an improvement.
Any additional comments?
Yeah, I appreciate that the applicant is here, that they sort of inherited this problem, and that they're here trying to fix it, to get it legalized. And I hate to hate to punish the applicant for, you know, a prior mistake, but I just really feel strongly that this is the kind of, well, I feel that our standard for approving, you know, for legalizing something that's there already should really be, would we approve it if it was proposed anew? And I really feel strongly that this is the kind of techno blight that we should not be tolerating. I think somebody's got to make these things look better. I know, you know, I know the challenge. I'm very intimately aware of the challenges involved in, you know, providing this kind of technology and these kind of services. You know, I've seen a lot of better ways to do it. It sounds like from what the applicant is saying that they have challenges about the antennas not transmitting through things. So, you know, I'm struggling with this one, but I still feel strongly that this is just, it's just not, it just doesn't look good. And we shouldn't be allowing these kinds of things. I think we fought really hard in the new planning regulations to make it difficult for people to have, for providers to put up antennas that are exposed. And I think that was for a reason. So that's my thoughts.
Any further comments?
I'd like to make a possible motion that we approve this with the condition that any future changes to the antennas be screened, and at the height of the any new antennas would be only at the top of the height of the cabinet, the equipment cabinet.
The penthouse?
The penthouse, yeah. No higher than the penthouse.
I just wanted to speak to your concern about any future changes and what it says in the telecommunications portion of the code about that. And so it says any non-exempt wireless communication facility shall not be established, expanded, or otherwise modified except in conformance with this article. Non-exempt facilities are subject to design review and/or conditional use permit pursuant to these procedures. And the only exemption that would be relevant in this case is a minor modification to existing wireless communication facilities, including replacement in kind or with smaller or less visible equipment that meet the standards set forth in this article. So I just wanted to let you know that there is provision for
kind of
changes that would add or enlarge, that it would have to be reviewed. So
Does that solve the problem for you? Do you want to make a motion?
No.
Oh,
I barely want to.
Gail?
No. I mean, I'm struggling with it too, because it seems to me that there does need to be a way to make those not look so messy and so disjointed and ugly, and they are directional, it seems. I understand that there are separation issues and there are line of sight issues, but we weren't provided with any of the technical information that substantiates that they need to be up and sort of jumbled around the way they are.
Is there any ability to make the whole installation more symmetrical? I mean, it's to place the antennas so that they're a little bit more symmetrical on the building?
Well, I think the only way you could do it that would really somewhat make them disappear is if you raise the height of the penthouse and sort of recess them into sunken boxes that didn't stick out from the penthouse. They'd still be a thing you'd see, but they wouldn't be sticking out of it. They'd be almost like windows in the side of it, but you want something taller.
Well, I don't want to see a taller screen or a taller penthouse. I think that one is ugly enough as it is, just sticking up as a box on top of the building, but I would really like to see something that would make them go away a little bit more.
I mean, part of the reason that it's not as visible from the other side is that there's one of these gable raised parapets, and I mean, I guess theoretically you could put a gable parapet on the front, you know, on this side as well. The penthouse is closer to the east side, so it wouldn't have quite the same impact in hiding it. Frankly, I'm not a big fan of the gable parapets either.
They're not
so
gorgeous either.
it would probably, you know, it would distract you more, and you probably wouldn't notice it as much and hide it to a certain degree.
You know, you're coming down from the, it's probably a moot point, I think.
And from my understanding is their line of sight, so they have to be visible from where they are. So the only way you can conceal them is to put something behind them and mount it to it. So at the height of these things, the only way that we could do that is to raise the height of the penthouse. They have to be where they are, because the other item that they're connecting to is in that same location in terms of elevation. So in order to hide them, you'd have to build something behind them that they attach to, so they become less transparent and they're attached to this wall, which then means you raise the penthouse, which no one here seems to be wanting to see. And the gable, in order for the gable to hide it, then you block the line of sight. So
I've also looked at it driving by, and the gable wouldn't really do the job.
No.
There's too small.
you'd see around to one side or...
Now, if a
As
building
Vanessa
got
pointed
built-
out, it would give it 4 points, though.
If a multi-story building is built on Site B, wouldn't that block the transmission for these antennas facing east?
Probably.
Yep, they'd probably have to address that then.
Is that an issue that's been considered?
That issue hasn't been considered, but it will be an issue, you know, possibly, depending on how big that other building ends up being.
Don't even know what's going to happen. But
Okay, yes, yeah, that happens a lot.
It could be a tall building.
That happens to us a lot, where a new building gets built even further out, could be a mile out from this location, and something gets built and blocks one of the shots. That does happen.
And you have really no air rights, I guess.
No, we don't have any air easements.
They punt. I'm going to make a motion that we approve it as staff recommends.
I'll
Can I make
second
the
that.
friendly amendment of adding the section, whatever, class 3 CEQA exemption?
Thank you, yes.
Okay, so just to clarify, Commissioner Coomerly's motion did not get a second, correct? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Motion by Commissioner Keller, second by Chair Cardoza to approve.
Chair Moss, or Vice Chair Moss.
Oh, I think that was a
seconded it.
friendly amendment to add the
Yeah.
CEQA exemption.
No,
Yes.
you seconded it.
I thought
Was seconded, yeah.
Yeah, I seconded it.
Oh,
Chair seconded.
Right.
I'm
and-
sorry, I didn't hear that. But I think we're not go with Commissioner Moss's suggestion to add the sequence.
Yes, that was a friendly amendment to your motion, seconded by Chair Cardoza.
Gotcha.
Okay. So on the motion, Commissioner Donaldson,
Aye.
Commissioner Gunkel,
Aye.
Commissioner Keller,
Aye.
Commissioner Coomerly,
Aye.
Commissioner Tan,
Aye.
Vice Chair Moss,
No.
and Chair Cardoza.
Aye.
6 ayes, 1 no. The application is approved. This decision may be appealed to the City Council within 15 days.